Greetings, one and all. How you all doing? I thought that I'd do a little show on the New Year. The Chinese dragon is here. I've even got my little Chinese dragon top on. So I thought that I would get the aphorisms of the Chinese dragon man himself, Bruce Lee. His book, Striking Thoughts, I've had for many years. And I'm sure many of you know of his aphorism about be like water. But he's done a whole book on them, which many people don't know about. His Bruce Lee's books, Wisdom for Daily Living. And it's all his different aphorisms. For example, there is only something for something, never something for nothing. And those of you that do the Gurdjieff work, he talks about that something that comes into him, that something that he needs to do, that something is the work. And we should be working on ourselves. And with Bruce Lee, he was working on himself. Obviously, he worked on his physical state with his Yeet Kune Do, the martial art form that he put together. And he also had wise words, wisdom, striking thoughts, as he calls it. And he talks about how a choice method imprisons the mind. A choice method, however exacting, fixes the mind in a pattern. A choice method is the cultivation of resistance, and where there is resistance, there is no understanding. A well-disciplined mind is not a free mind. Any technique, however, worthy and desirable, becomes a disease when the mind is obsessed with it. And we can become obsessed with things, with life that's going on around us. Day-to-day routines can get in our way. Other people's shit gets in our way. Family shit gets in our way, but we need to have a clear mind to be able to work with this. And he goes on to say, the creating individual is more important than any system. Man, the living creature, the creating individual, is always more important than any established style or system. And I would like to just encourage people to remember that even though the Gurdjieff work is a system, and as Ouspensky said at the end, there is no system. But I think that's because he was trying to say, you create your own system. Gurdjieff and his writings are there to give you like a backbone to get going, to work upon yourselves. But you have to blaze your own way, go forward in your own way, blaze your own star out to the solar system, using your system, which you can take from other people's systems. Obviously, pick and mix is something that I know many people are very against, but then you're like imprisoning yourself to one system where there are many different ways to the divine or to your whoever you are supposed to be. You're supposed to be freeing yourself to be who you are, the real I. I'm just flicking through the book and just picking ones out. The adaptive mind, that of not being tense but ready, not thinking but not dreaming, not being rigidly set but flexible, aware and alert, ready for whatever may come. So true, we need to be flexible. We must always expect the unexpected. But if we're rigid in our thoughts, if we're rigid in our ways, okay, things can knock you down or try to knock you down. But we need to be flexible, movable, ready to maneuver, ready for them attacking. But obviously we're not fighting back physically, but we're fighting back to be our own real self. But we mustn't be rigid and set in ways. I have so many people that, well, actually haven't for a while, which has been really good. That's kind of stopped now. People just throwing at me Gurdjieff quotes, and it's like, well, do you actually follow these quotes through, or are you just putting quotes up at me? Be free enough to obviously ponder on them quotes, work with them, but work with yourself as well. There has to be no rigidity. You don't have to follow the law. I don't think Gurdjieff ever put it down as law. He was putting forward ways to do the work, which is why he gave different exercises to different peoples, because he could see how they were. Person A needed to do this, person B needed to do it that way. We're not all the same, so we don't all have to follow the law or the rules rigidly. We have to find the ones that work for us. Be adaptable. Adaptability is intelligence. Flicking through. Intelligence is sometimes defined as the capacity of the individual to adjust himself successfully to his environment, or to adjust the environment to his needs. Sometimes we get stuck in patterns, don't we? And we just continue to do the same thing, even though we know we're not happy and we're not going anywhere. But it's just it's something us humans do. We just continue to do the same old thing, repeat patterns, even though we're miserable, when we should be breaking free the patterns and going and finding a life that we want to do, we want to be in, find happiness. There seems to be so many blocks out there to try and stop us, but most of the time it's ourselves stopping us, freeing ourselves and moving on. Right, let me just flick the book again. Knowledge, here we go. Attempting to define knowledge. The object of knowing is constantly changing. Feeling, tasting, sensational experiment, etc. are dogmas and not true knowledge, as they can be wrong. Objects of perception, therefore, are ruled out of true knowledge. Interesting, hey? The object of knowing is constantly changing. I suppose as you get more and more knowledge, it can change your perspective on things. Knowledge is helping you to change in yourself, and we're supposed to be changing that knowledge into wisdom. I wonder if he does quotes on wisdom. I'm sure he does. But we shouldn't, like I was saying earlier, people are very rigid in their ways, and what they know is the only way. Where with our training, we should be learning to be able to adapt and change with things. Things can be different all the time. You could get thrown new knowledge that makes you realize that what you was learning before might not be quite right or not for you. Sometimes knowledge changes. I've got a really powerful joystick going. It's getting to the back of my throat. Knowledge is not simply perception. Objects of thought rather than objects of perception are real, more perfect, intellectual, and constant. Knowledge will give you power, but character, respect. So you can have all the knowledge in the world and misuse it because you want to rule with it or something, take over the world, which does not necessarily bring you respect. And I'm sure you've met many people like this, and I have in my life, of people that know everything, but they're not very nice people that you respect. You just like realize, oh, they're a know-it-all, Mr. I know everything at the end of the bar. But who are they as a character? What kind of person are they? And do you want to be one of those that just throws knowledge at people, but you've got no character? We're supposed to be developing our character to be the real us, bring the real person through. And hopefully our characters are charismatic. Though he does go on to say learning is discovery, the discovery of the cause of our ignorance, which is very important. We don't want to be ignorant. However, the best way of learning is not the computation of information. Learning is discovering, uncovering what is there in us. When we discover, we are uncovering our own ability, our own eyes, in order to find our potential, to see what is going on, to discover how we can enlarge our lives, to find means at our disposal that will let us cope with a difficult situation. And all this, I maintain, is taking place in the here and now. And we're supposed to be living in the here and now. But we also want to develop ourselves, as I was saying, and as he's saying here, we're supposed to be discovering ourselves and discovering our true abilities, not being suppressed down, not being put down by others, and too many peers out there trying to make us just follow along with everybody else. We're all trying to be individuals, just like everybody else. Let's see. So here we go. On gaining freedom. Who says we have to gain freedom? Freedom has always been with us and is not something to be gained at the end through following some particular formulas. We do not become, we simply are, which is quite true, really. I know though there are systems like the Gurdjieff system that's helped me free myself from all my old patterns and my old ways of being. So systems are there to help us develop, but then once I've learned how to use that system, I should then be going forth, and the same with you, of course, into the world, being a free person and being able to do things my way, but in a way that we're not hurting anybody else. We're not being a bully. We're not putting our needs before everyone else's, because we should still be working so that we're trying to make, well, as Gurdjieff says in his the 5 not aphorisms, what are they anyway, but we should be doing it for the good of everybody, but at the same time helping to develop ourselves. Who are we? Who are you? Learning to know ourselves helps us to understand where we're going in this world, which is something Bruce Lee definitely knew. He knew who he was, which made him Bruce Lee, even though that wasn't his real name. I did used to wonder why he picked the name Bruce, and then someone said to me he was a big fan of Batman, the Batman, which is probably why he chose Bruce as his English name. Right. Matter and the need for security. In science, we're trying to find ultimate matter, but the more we split up matter, the more we find other matter. We find movement, and movement equals energy. Movement impacts energy, but no things. Things come about more or less by man's need for security. You can manipulate a thing. You can play fitting games with it. These concepts, these somethings can be put together into something else. Something is a thing. So even abstract noun becomes a thing. And like I was saying earlier, Gurdjieff was talking about the something that drove him along. Whereas here, I think Bruce is trying to remind us that we shouldn't be stuck in matter, obviously. We must be aware of the energies that are going on around us and the energies we are creating at the same time, and how somebody else's energy can affect us and how our energy affects somebody else. Yeah, it's all vibrations, as Nikola Tesla reminds us. And then he says about removing the dirt of preconceived opinion. Something very important we have to do in the Gurdjieff work. Scratch away all the dirt our being has accumulated and reveal reality in its isness, or in its suchness, or in its nakedness, which corresponds to the Buddhist concept of emptiness. And Gurdjieff talks about we need to empty ourselves and then rebuild ourselves from a work point of view. To empty ourselves of all the programming and such like that we've been had put onto us as we've grown up in this world, and instead start anew, but in a crystallize yourself in a new way, make yourself stronger, faster, make yourself bionic. I've been watching too much $6 Million Man lately. Bruce says, life is wide, limitless. There is no border, no frontier. Is space the final frontier? Anyway, Gurdjieff talks a lot about space and cosmology. There is no frontier. We should be able to just go forward in the way we want to, again, without hurting anybody. Hopefully in a way that we're helping other people as well. But we don't want other people's boundaries stopping us. And many people do try and stop us with their own boundaries and their own ideas of how life should be. You know, people used to tell me that I was, you know, silly going off looking at all these spiritual paths. I should just get in with reality, you know, and join the material rat race world, which you can still do if you're awake, but you'll be still doing it in a different way to everybody else. But everybody feels secure when everybody's doing the same thing. It's the old sheep herd mentality, where we're the ones that are going free to do what we want. And Bruce reminds us, realize the fact that you simply live and not live for. You know, people live for their families, people live for getting their next phone, people live for going on holiday. So they, you know, but whereas we want to just live our lives, be aware of what it is we're doing in our life and living the life we want to live. Living exists when life lives through us and unhampered in its flow. For he who is living is not conscious of living, and in this is the life it lives, which is very true. If you're not conscious that you're living, you just go along in the mechanical way, even though people think they're living, you know, all the sleepy people. But when we're awake, we actually live. And he continues to say, life lives, and in the living flow, no questions are raised. The reason is that life is a living now. So in order to live life wholeheartedly, the answer is life simply is. Life is simply what our feelings do to us. The meaning of life is that it is to be lived and is not to be traded and conceptualized and squeezed into a pattern of systems. Be free, people. Right, let's do our spirituality. I've just come to that page. Right, okay. The spiritual force transcends all. I feel I have this great creative and spiritual force within me that is greater than faith, greater than ambition, greater than confidence, greater than determination, greater than vision. It is all these combined. My brain becomes magnetized with this dominating force, which I hold in my hand. You know, Bruce was a driving force, wasn't he? And he was also very spiritual in his ways. He understood how spirituality works. But he also knew how religion, the institutions, tried to control people, which is why he was always on about freedom. The spirit is no doubt the controlling agent of our existence. As to its whereabouts, we can never tell. Where does the spirit come from? Who put the spirit in matter, as William Blake once said? They're altogether beyond the realm of corporality. This invisible seat controls every movement in whatever external situation it may happen to find itself. It is thus to be extremely mobile, no stopping in any place at any moment. And that's so true. The spirit is constantly moving, constantly working. You know, and we can, it's like the force in the Jedi films, you know, it's there. It's neutral, and it's how we use it decides whether we're going to be a bad Sith or a good Jedi. And he talks about spiritual power. Recognize and use the spiritual power of the infinite. The intangible represents the real power of the universe. It is the seed of the tangible, and we're the tangible, obviously. And I've been going so many shows about how we need to find our way to connect into the divine, so that we're part of that flow, and we're working with the divine. As Gurdjieff says, his endlessness is waiting for us to connect. But he also has a little warning. The cultivation of the spirit is elusive and difficult, and the tendency towards it is rarely spontaneous. We have to work on it. We have to work on ourselves, ponder upon what it is we want in life and who we want to be, and what our connection is to the divine and how we make that connection. The spirit of the universe, the integrating principle of the whole, the spirit, as it were, of the universe, instinct with contrariance, which flows with purpose. And then he goes on to talk about seeking the divine within. Whether it is the Godhead or not, I feel this great force, this untapped power, this dynamic something within me. This feeling defies description, and there is no experience with which this feeling may be compared. It is something like a strong emotion mixed with faith, and a lot stronger. And then he has a whole chapter on personal liberation. Obviously, I'm just picking aphorisms out here, quotes. The individual and the what should be. Why do you as an individual depend on thousands of years of propaganda, ideals, principles? The what should be leads to hypocrisy, as many of us know. Remove all psychic obstruction. In order to display its native activities to the utmost limit, remove all psychic obstruction. Now, I find that quite interesting. I used to do all kinds of psychic classes and workshops and such like years and years and years ago. And I realized I don't need any of that. All I need is my trust in God, my faith in the divine source, and my need, my want, my wish, my desire to work with the divine source. I don't need no channeling. I don't need no messages from the dead. I don't need demonic entities being called up to help me get what I need. I just need to have trust and faith in the universe and the divine source. He goes on to talk about dropping your inner resistance, because many people have resistance to doing the work. As you know, we've all come up against it. We have our moments when we're just like, why? What am I doing? But also sometimes it's just difficult to do it, isn't it? It's taking that first step. It's one of the things I did learn from my Kabbalah training with Warren Kenton years ago, of, that first step. Once you take it, that's the most difficult part of doing spiritual work, is the first step. Bruce says, are you a flowing entity, capable to flow with external circumstances, or are you resisting with your set choice pattern? Well, are you? Are you a flowing entity? What's stopping you going forward? Are you able to flow like water? The truth is outside of all set patterns. Conditioning is to limit a person within the framework of a particular system, which is what I was talking about earlier on. All fixed set patterns are incapable of adaptability or pliability. The truth is outside of all fixed patterns, which I realize now is why I never really joined anything and stuck with their rules and regulations. I wanted to be able to be adaptable. And I could see that a lot of rules and regulations in groups, societies, circles and such like, keeps you stuck in a pattern. And patterns might be good for a little while, but then we have to free ourselves and go and try something else. Gurdjieff used to say about how he was expecting his students, they're supposed to stay with him for a while, then they should have learned what they're supposed to do in life and go. They're not going to stay with him forever. He didn't want them around forever. He didn't want to be teaching the same people over and over again every day. They should have been learning from what it is he's given them. And then you go off into your next stage of life. Empty your mind and expand your life. When there is a particle of dust in your eye, the world becomes a narrow path. Have your mind completely free from objects, and how much this life expands. And it does, as I was saying, you go off, you take the knowledge that you've learned from, set A, and go off looking for set B to take it to there, and then learn a bit more, and then go forward and expand and expand and expand your knowledge, which will turn into wisdom, and your spiritual path will expand. You don't want a little narrow-minded, one way only. That's no good. No blinkers. We need to be able to see everything, full round perception of what is going on. Panoramic view. We live in cliches, in patterned behavior. We're playing the same role over and over again. To raise our potential is to live and review every second refreshed. Bruce is right, Break the patterning. One must die to one's conditioning. One must be uninfluenced and die to one's conditioning in order to be aware of the totally fresh, totally new, because reality changes every moment, even as I say it. Which, of course, is one of the things Gurdjieff's on about as well. We need to die to our old ways, die to our conditioning, kill off all them programs, reset ourselves and start afresh. Let's see what else. Oh, I'm going to do the parable of Kuan Yin. Kuan Yin, the goddess of mercy, is sometimes represented with 1,000 arms, each holding a different instrument. If her mind stops with the use, for instance, of a spear, all the other arms, the 999, will be of no use whatsoever. It is only because of her mind not stopping with the use of one arm, but moving from one instrument to another, that all her arms prove useful with the utmost degree of efficiency. Thus, the figure is meant to demonstrate that when the ultimate truth is realized, even as many as 1,000 arms of one body may be serviceable in one way or another. And it kind of reminds me of Gurdjieff talking about all our different eyes, and all our different eyes trying to take control of ourselves. But if we can get all our eyes to work together, you know the rest of the story. Wushin. Wushin is the natural process of thought. So long as the mind thinks what it wants, there is absolutely no effort in letting it go. And the disappearance of the effort to let go is precisely the disappearance of the separate thinker. There is nothing to try to do, for whatever comes up moment by moment is accepted, including non-acceptance. Non-seeing and no mind are not renunciations, but fulfillment. The seeing that is without subject or object is pure seeing, which is quite hard to do in this modern world, I find myself, but I have to keep reminding myself of it. That's why I read these kinds of books or listen to these kinds of people, because they remind me of what this work is supposed to be helping me do. So it's got a little bit about fear. Understanding fear. To understand your fear is the beginning of really seeing. And as Yoda says in the Star Wars movies, fear leads to the dark side. There is intelligence when you are not afraid. Sensitivity is not possible if you're afraid of this or that, because fear blocks. There can be no initiative if one has fear, and fear compels us to cling to tradition, to gurus, etc., which I do see with a lot of people who feel fearful when they give something up. Like I was saying before about, you use one workshop or class for a while and then you move on to another, but people sometimes find it very difficult to leave places because of the fear of going into the unknown. But this work should be developing us not to fear, to show us that we're taking a leap of faith, but at the same time the gods are behind us if we're doing this kind of work. The spirit will be with you if you work with it. I know some people that have been going to the same Gurdjieff groups for decades, and I don't really see much change in them over that time. Maybe they feel they have changed, and I'm not poo-pooing groups, but group work is helpful. But we need to change and adapt things, and not have the same thing happening all the time. The fear of not being esteemed by others. That stops a lot of people. The inner self is the true self. In order to realize our true self, we must be willing to live without being dependent upon the opinion of others. This is something Gurdjieff talks about all the time. Doesn't matter what other people think, just be the real you. When we are completely self-sufficient, we can have no fear of not being esteemed by others. Flow in the process of life. You can never step in the same water twice, my friend. Like flowing water, life is perpetual movement. There is nothing fixed. Whatever your problems happen to be in the future, remember well that they cannot remain stationary, but must move together with your living spirit. Otherwise, you will drift into artificiality or attempt to solidify the ever-flowing. To avoid that, you must change and be flexible. Remember the usefulness of a cup. Remember, the usefulness of a cup is in its emptiness. I'm sorry I mucked that one up, but I think that was a really important aphorism. We can never step in the same water twice. We never step in the same river twice. Water is constantly flowing, and we should be constantly flowing. So, Bruce Lee says, a teacher is never a giver of truth. He is a guide appointed to the truth that each student must find for himself. A good teacher is merely a catalyst. So I hope this has helped you. And I recommend this book if you can find it. I know it's not easy to find these days, but he's got some wonderful aphorisms in him, in the book, Bruce Lee. Wonderful movies, always watch his movies. From me to you, thank you for watching. And may your year of the dragon bring you gold. Because dragons like to hide in their hills, their mountains, sitting on all the gold that glitters that they've stored, and then sometimes they come out looking for more. They can be a bit ferocious, or they can be a gentle dragon. And may the dragons walk with you. Peace and love till next time. Thank you for watching, and thank you for all the thanks buttons, people, those that have been pressing the thanks buttons and giving me thank you for your donations. Till next time.